All right, sports fans, how's everybody out there doing? William Martin coming at you one more time here on YouTube with another edition of the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge Podcast. It's not how you start, folks, but it's more about how you finish. And for Seattle Seahawks quarterback Sam Darnold, he is the embodiment of that, along with the importance of being in the right organization. We all know that Darnold was the third pick of the 2018 NFL draft by the New York Jets, and he was on a fast track to nowhere there. And as quick as people, or some people at least, wanted to label Darnold as a bust with the Jets, he had to bounce around the National Football League a little bit before hitting pay dirt last year with the Minnesota Vikings, which led to his multi year deal this year with the Seahawks. So, for the first time in Sam Darnold's NFL career, he truly has himself a home. After the Jets traded Darnold to the Carolina Panthers, from there on, the pressure was gone from him. And each step along the way, from that point on, little to nothing was really expected of him. But Sam Darnold, to me, is a perfect example of how tough it is for quarterbacks in the National Football League to succeed or be able to succeed in a bad environment. The last 2 years have really seen Darnold become one of the better quarterbacks in the NFL. He threw a combined 60 touchdowns over the last two regular seasons, one with Minnesota and, of course, this year with Seattle. And in each of those years, he was 14-3 in the regular season. And as good as things were last year for Darnold, when he was throwing that football to Justin Jefferson in Minnesota, he walked into an even better situation, I truly do believe, in Seattle. So you look at it with the Seahawks right now. It's Mike McDonald. It's not Pete Carroll as the head coach of the Seahawks. We know that. But John Schneider is still calling the shots in this front office as the GM. And together, he and McDonald have gone on to build a team in the mode of the one that won the Super Bowl 12 years ago for this franchise. That Seahawks team had a strong running game, talented wide receiver, a stout run defense, or a stout defense completely, and a consistency at the quarterback position. That time, of course, in the form of Russell Wilson. This Seahawks team has a lot of balance as well, and the end result is we see Sam Darnold playing his best football of his career. Most importantly, playing some darn good football in this postseason, and because of that, we look at Sam Darnold, and he's now 60 football minutes away from writing his name in the NFL record books forever if he is able to help the Seahawks win the Super Bowl. I truly do feel that Sam Darnold is a classic example of why teams and people cannot give up on young quarterbacks early, as it truly comes down to the situations and the organizations that they are put into. The Jets, who drafted Darnold, let's face it, they are a disaster waiting to happen. As we're talking about a franchise now that hasn't made the playoffs in 15 years. And as I said, or have said in the past, the Jets don't know how to develop a quarterback, and they really couldn't do it if their lives depended on it. And I mean, I've said this before about the Jets organization. They are too focused on finding the next Joe Namath at quarterback. And like I keep saying, that guy does not exist. And aside from all of that, what really hurt me, in my opinion, or what hurt Darnold during his time with the Jets, it's not that he couldn't play. It's the lack of talent that the Jets put around him. I mean, listen, go back and look at some of the archives for the Jets and see some of the receivers that Sam Darnold was throwing the football to. Okay. And that lack of talent that was put around him while also being thrust into the fire as a starting quarterback in year number one on a bad team. The head coach that drafted him, Todd Bowles, was gone a year later. The general manager who drafted him, Mike McCagnon, was gone a year after that. And then Darnold was a lame duck quarterback under a new regime. And then, of course, there's conflicting reports. But I truly do feel that Woody Johnson, the Jets team owner, kind of forced the hand of the Jets' new regime at that time. Robert Saleh as the head coach, and Joe Douglas as the GM. I could be wrong. Okay, please feel free to chime in. But instead of giving up on Darnold, they should have used those picks to try to put some talent around him. And of course, they didn't. They traded him to Carolina. They drafted Zach Wilson, and of course, the rest was history. Um, the kid, what's going on, man? Long time. How you been, man? I hope everything is going well for you here in the new year. You're saying I think QBs just got to get lucky and land on the right team. Absolutely. You're saying Daniel Jones left the Giants and went to the Colts and did better. But I'm glad he's gone because Jackson Dart is that guy. Well, I take it that you're a Giants fan. I will. That's right. You did tell me that before. Please, I'm having a senior moment here. But nonetheless, yeah. Listen, it comes down to the right situations, and I think switching gears real quick to Daniel Jones. He had some flashes, of course, in 2022. I do believe in Brian Daboll as the Giants head coach, but nonetheless, he went to an even better situation with Indy. And sometimes, more often than not, we see some of these first round quarterbacks flame out with the team that drafted them due to the fact that hey unrealistic expectations, and they go to bad teams with bad coaching, with bad front offices, and they're expected to turn things around. And just like the Jets, perfect segue here. So many of these bad franchises around the NFL, they expect these young quarterbacks come in with a lack of talent around them, lack of quality coaching, and they want them to basically turn water into wine, which is part of their unrealistic expectations. I always say this: great players don't win championships, and neither do great teams. It comes down to great organizations. And of course, we're about to see two great organizations get it on next Sunday at Super Bowl 60 between the Patriots and the Seahawks. And of course, the reason why I bring the Patriots in, um, this is their 12th appearance, most all time, 11th under their team owner, Robert Kraft. And to the Patriots' credit, just like it is with the Seahawks, both of these teams were not afraid to move on from from Super Bowl winning head coaches who they felt were done in Pete Carroll and Bill Belichick, respectively. And clearly, for both of these franchises, it was the right move. You look how quickly that Mike McDonald has gotten this team back to a Super Bowl. You look how quickly Mike Vrabel got the Patriots there in year number one. Okay. So clearly, having the right people lead your organization is important. And getting back to Seattle, you look at it because they had to be extremely giddy when the Vikings decided to not re-sign Sam Darnold after his 2024 season. And of course, because of that, we just saw the Vikings GM, receive his walking papers today because of it. So you look at Sam Darnold with the Jets, and when the Jets did draft him, they of course were hoping for the USC version of Sam Darnold, but they forgot to put that Southern California talent around him. Seahawks didn't forget to do it, which is why they're getting prepped to play in the Super Bowl. And don't get me wrong, okay? Because you look at Sam Darnold, he's clearly he's playing better because he has a better team around him. But he's not a guy that necessarily needs a team to carry him. He's not a game manager at quarterback. But like I've said before, one guy cannot get it done by himself in the NFL. But again, you look at how it's been for him and how it just simply clicked. And it started to click, honestly, during that time with Carolina. And, he was Brock Purdy's backup in San Francisco when they went to the Super Bowl in 2023. And then, of course, the last two seasons, 24 with the Vikings, and, of course, this past season with the Seahawks. But nonetheless, Sam Darnold has shown, and he's continuing to progress and show, what, he can do it when his number is called. You're saying, yeah, how come the Vikings didn't re-sign Sam Darnold? I didn't understand that. He played good there. Well, I'll tell you like this. What it came down to was that, hey, they brought Sam Darnold in as a guy who was supposed to compete with J.J. McCarthy, their first round pick. And J.J. McCarthy was and is supposed to be the guy for the Vikings. What happened was nobody expected J.J. McCarthy to get hurt so early in the season. He got hurt in training camp, had needed knee surgery. And nobody expected what we saw from Sam Darnold. And what it was Kevin O'Connell, the Vikings head coach, wanted to keep Sam Darnold, the GM who drafted JJ McCarthy, wanted to go with JJ McCarthy. And from what I'm hearing, the Vikings had a trade on the table to send JJ McCarthy to the Raiders and re sign Sam Darnold and go forward. Of course, that was not the case. We saw Sam Darnold sign with Seattle. The Vikings went with JJ McCarthy. There's people who still have reservations about JJ McCarthy as a starting quarterback in the NFL. But nonetheless, with him, when he played, clearly the offense did not look the same as it was uh, with Sam Darnold last year, and of course the Vikings paid for it. Ken Drickles, what's going on, my man? You're asking what the trade offer was. From what I'm hearing, they did have something on the table. I'm not sure what the compensation was as far as what um, the Vikings were supposed to get back from the Raiders. You're hearing some more of this stuff come out today, being that the Vikings did move on from their general manager, which of course was shocking. And a lot from what you're hearing is basically is centered around Sam Darnold. And I don't think that when the Vikings made the decision to move on from Sam Darnold, I don't think that they envisioned what we're currently seeing from Sam Darnold with Seattle. I feel like some people probably felt like Sam Darnold was turning the corner as a quarterback, but I think he's continued to grow off of last season. Clearly, he doesn't have the same amount of touchdown passes per se this season as he did last year, but he doesn't have to because look at the balance that the Seahawks have on offense. You go from if you're Sam Darnold, you go from one phenomenal receiver in Justin Jefferson to another one in Jackson Smith and Jingba, and then of course, what can you say about that run game? But nonetheless, um, I guarantee you now that the Vikings definitely regret, moving on from Sam Darnold in favor of J.J. McCarthy, and I guarantee you the Seattle Seahawks are definitely telling them thank you. But nonetheless, you look at this season with Sam Darnold, and he had a bad game against the Rams back in November when he threw 4 interceptions, and still Seattle had an opportunity to win that game if not for a missed field goal at the buzzer. But since then, Sam Darnold was a much better quarterback. Had the bad first half uh, last month against the Rams on Thursday night. Turned it on in the second half in overtime, and of course, made the key plays to help the Seahawks come back and beat Los Angeles. And then in the division clinching game, last game of the season, didn't throw a touchdown pass, but he was very efficient as the Seahawks, for what it's worth, really dominated the 49ers to win the NFC West, excuse me, and get home field advantage in the playoffs. And of course, it mattered. And you look at these playoffs so far, Sam Darnold really didn't have to put this team on his back per se against San Francisco. Seattle just came out like gangbusters in that game and dominated them. But then he made the key plays with his arm when he had to against the Rams in the NFC Championship game. 25 of 36 for 346 yards or 3 touchdowns last Sunday as Seattle moved on. And he's going to have a hand in Seattle, if they're going to win Super Bowl 60 next Sunday against New England. You're saying the kid, I'm not a fan of either team, but I'm rooting for Sam Darnold and the Seahawks. Hopefully they can pull it off. Well, I'll tell you like this. Seattle is favored, and I think they're going to continue to be favored throughout leading up to this contest. But I'll tell you like this. I know there's talks about Darnold being hurt, this, that, and the third. But I think, he's going to be good to go. Ken Drickles, you're saying, I think Darnold fits Clint's system to a T. Listen, spot on, my man. I can't disagree with anything that you just said right there. You think Clint might stay or take the Raiders game, or do you think Darnold can play even better? Well, to answer your first question, I think at this point the Raiders' job is Clint Kubiak's to lose, and I think if I was a betting man, I feel like the Raiders are putting all of their eggs in the Clint Kubiak basket. So what they're going to have to sell him on is because basically you have to convince Clint Kubiak that, hey, you know what? We have a situation here. that you can build and grow in. Because, yeah, you got a bad team. And, of course, the Raiders have been god awful for a dog's age right now. But I feel like a guy like Clint Kubiak, he's not going to leave Seattle because they've got a good situation right there. Because all jokes aside, win or lose in this game, Seattle's got a ton of cap space to work with in the offseason. And it's one of those where they don't have to go out there and lure guys to come to play for them. Okay. It's kind of like how it was, when Pete Carroll built that thing the last time. So what we're seeing from the Seahawks, they're not going away anytime soon. So I'm looking at it, if you're Clint Kubiak, do you really want to walk away from that, or do you want the opportunity to build something with the Raiders? Now, the Raiders have even more cap space than the Seahawks going into the offseason. I think the Raiders are expected to have close to $100 million in cap space. But I always say this, cap space is kind of like draft picks. It's only good if you know what you're doing with it. So you got that. You have Tom Brady as a minority owner, and I think Tom Brady is going to have more and more of a say within this Raiders organization, in my opinion. With that said, you've got Ashton Genty at running back. Okay, you've got Brock Bowers at tight end. You got the first overall pick, and everybody expects the Raiders to use it on Fernando Mendoza. So you've got something to work with there. However, the Raiders need a lot of help. Okay, you need an offensive line, you need a defensive line, you need linebackers, you need a secondary. So it just depends um, on how Clint Kubiak feels about the situation. I feel like the Raiders are going to have to go out there and make him an offer he can't refuse. It's one of those, since Seattle has, gotten to the Super Bowl, of course, some of those head coaching gigs have been filled up already. I mean, there were 10 this offseason. But I feel like the Raiders and the Cardinals are possibly, positioning themselves to try to make a run at Clint Kubiak. I will say this about the Cardinals. Their situation is a little bit different because all signs point to them moving on from Kyler Murray. Remember, they fired the head coach, Jonathan Gannon, but they kept the general manager. And I think the general manager has waned on Kyler Murray. So what are you going to do at quarterback there? We don't know. But it's one of those where I think the Raiders are going to have to make Clint Kubiak an offer that he cannot refuse. Either way, honestly, I feel like it's a win-win for him because you're still going to be put in a winning situation if you return to the Seahawks as their OC for 2026. But you know what? He's hot right now, and he's very popular. And one of these teams is definitely going to scoop him up. The kid, you're saying, I don't get it. An NBA and baseball team seems to be able to buy any player anytime, but the NFL's cap space, I don't get it. Well, the NFL has a harder cap than the NBA, and of course the MLB. They're probably going to be pushing for it after the season. But nonetheless, the good teams in the National Football League, unlike the good teams in the NBA that want to win, they find ways to work around the cap. However, that bill does come due. Okay, so it's one of those where some of the teams that you see that might not have a lot of cap space right now, I guarantee you there's going to be changes. But you need a good cap guy in your GM who knows how to manage things. And a lot of things with the Seattle Seahawks is the fact that, hey, a lot of these guys are young, and that comes down to drafting, that comes down to developing their talent. But I'll tell you like this, if the Seahawks are able to win, a lot of those young guys on that team are definitely going to be coming looking for raises in the offseason. And if they help you win a Super Bowl, I guarantee you that they'll deserve it. Kendrick, to answer the second part of your question, please forgive me for that. You're asking me, do I think that Sam Darnold can play even better? Listen, absolutely. Because I think there's no pressure on him in Seattle. And I think, Kevin O'Connell is a solid offensive coach. And we saw that last year with the Vikings. And basically, just get the football to Justin Jefferson to get out of his way. And then even this year with Seattle, there's more balance than he had with the Vikings. And Sam Darnold looks comfortable. And I know that some people will tease him and get on the fact of, when he was mic'd up, famously that time on Monday night when he was with the Jets and they were playing the Patriots and somehow he was seeing ghosts out there. But listen, I feel like the game is slowed down for him. And it comes down to coaches. And, I can tell you when I played sports when I was younger, sometimes it's not about the head coach. Sometimes it's about the assistant coaches. And sometimes, you need a different voice. Sometimes you need a different change of scenery. And I think Sam Darnold has gotten all of that. And sure, Seattle paid him, but they didn't like commit to him long term because they only gave him a 3-year deal. But I just truly do feel that, you know what? He is so comfortable right now. And I think we're beginning to see the Sam Darnold that everybody expected to see when he came out of the University of Southern California. But again, the Jets are a terrible organization. And, if you go back and watch that Sam Darnold that was at SC, he was kind of cool and collected in that pocket, and he felt like he could do whatever he wanted. That was not the case with the Jets because the Jets were a train wreck. Um, he got some of that confidence back, of course, with the Vikings. And I think, getting back to the Vikings, what hurt him were his final two games. The winner take all scenario that he had last year with the Vikings against the Detroit Lions for the division and, of course, home field advantage. And he played terrible against the Lions. And then, of course, the wild card loss that the Vikings had to the Los Angeles Rams, where he played terrible. And, we saw the Rams defense be all over him like ugly on an ape. But nonetheless, I think that led to the Vikings giving up on him. And of course, even with that said, he still went to Seattle with the moniker, you know what, Sam Darnold's like, yeah, but, and people are still having that mindset on him where it's like, wow, Sam Darnold's in the Super Bowl. But I always say this, there's no such thing as a bad quarterback to start for a Super Bowl team because you're in the Super Bowl for a reason. And like I said, after last Sunday, when the Patriots beat the Broncos, the Patriots deserve to be there. The Seahawks deserve to be there. Sam Darnold deserves to be there. He's done the right things for the bulk of this season to help this team get there. That team believes in him. Okay, that organization believes in him. And I think if they win, if they're able to win next Sunday, he's going to have a big hand in it. So yeah, to your question, I think he can get better, and I think in a good way. And I'm looking at that and I'm saying, you know what? The sky's the limit for him potentially, especially if they go out there and win that game. The kid, you're saying, do you think maybe the pressure from the NYC media got to him a little? I don't think it got to him a little. I think it got to him a lot. Okay, it's one of those where he played in Southern California in Los Angeles, big media market, but it's a big difference in LA and New York, especially with the Jets because of the unrealistic expectations, especially for quarterbacks. People will follow the Jets and see them take a quarterback, and it's just like, oh, we have a savior. And it's the equivalent to buying a house, but you're not doing your due diligence on the house. You're not having a home inspection. You're not doing all the little things to make sure that the house is sound. Having a quarterback is fine. Who's going to protect him? Who's going to coach him up? Who's going to coach him up at his position? Who's he throwing the football to? Who's he handing the football off to? And a lot of these things, between that, the coaching, the Jets and their just dysfunction, it's very tough for anybody to succeed there. And I mean, again, the guy that Sam Darnold replaced in Seattle at quarterback, Geno Smith, another former Jets quarterback, second round pick. And of course, a lot of people had a lot of reservations about Geno Smith during his time with the Jets. Of course, bounced around a little bit in the NFL, was Russell Wilson's backup for several years in Seattle. And then, of course, when they moved on from him, they put Geno in that starting slot. And I think Geno Smith is finished as a starter at this point in his career. But nonetheless, those 3 years when Geno Smith was Seattle starting quarterback, he was able to salvage his career. So again, it comes down to situation. So yeah, definitely the pressure definitely affects that situation. And I think Sam Darnold got away from it. And you know what? He's been able to succeed. The media in Seattle, they're not harsh. Okay, they can be critical of their players at times. Times, don't get me wrong, but nonetheless, you go out there and take care of your business. They'll love you forever. I know that it didn't end well for Russell Wilson with the Seahawks, but I guarantee you, when his career is done, he's going to come back there and be loved. You think about how that organization still loves Jim Zorn, still loves Dave Craig at starting quarterback. And of course, if Sam Darnold is able to continue on the trajectory that he is currently having right now in the Pacific Northwest, he's going to be in that conversation, especially if if he helps the Seahawks win a championship. You think about Matt Hasselbeck, and of course, Matt Hasselbeck had a tremendous career with the Seattle Seahawks, and of course, it gets glossed over right now because it's almost like 15 years after the fact. But nonetheless, had the best years, excuse me, of his NFL career in the Pacific Northwest. TFX, what's going on, man? Happy Friday to you, man. You're saying Sam still needs one more win though before we know if he has the clutch game. Well, I'll tell you like this. I think that game, that second game, that Thursday night game against the Rams, the way he played in the second half and overtime, I think he really turned the corner. And you look at what he's basically done in the last three games for Seattle, winner basically games that they needed. That game against the 49ers to win the NFC West and get home field advantage. Missed some throws, but he was still 20 of 26, no interceptions. Big thing. 49 against the 49ers in the playoffs. They dominated that game. It was over before it started, but nonetheless, Sam Darnold didn't have to do a lot. And then, of course, you look at the NFC Championship game. He went out there and balled out. And I think the biggest thing for me with Sam Darnold, last three games, zero interceptions, and he's taking care of the football. That's going to be important because the thing is this. I look at New England, and New England's going to have to pick their poison, giving like a little brief giveaway to my thoughts on Super Bowl 60 numbers next Sunday. New England's going to have to pick their poison, and it's going to kind of be like what we saw with Kansas City's defense last year in the Super Bowl against Philly. We're going to try to take the run game away and make Sam Darnold beat us. Or, you know what, we're going to let them run the football. And honestly, if you're New England, you don't want to allow Seattle to get their run game going with Kenneth Walker. I know that they don't have Zach Charbonnet, but nonetheless, you don't want it. You don't want to allow K9 to get going. So I think what they're going to have to try to do, they're going to have to try to take that run game away, which is easier said than done. And they're going to have to make Sam Darnold try to beat them. And in order for them to do that, they're going to have to heat him up because what we've seen so far from the Patriots in this postseason, they've been able to heat up every opposing quarterback that they face. In the AFC Championship game, they played back early against Jarrett Stidham because they really didn't know what he could or couldn't do. But once they started to heat him up, and of course people are going to talk about the snow, different game. They heated up C.J. Stroud in the second round against the Texans, and of course they heated up Justin Herbert in the first round when they faced the Chargers. They're going to have to try to heat up Sam Darnold. Okay, but you got a confident quarterback, and I think Clint Kubiak and Mike McDonald are going to have him ready. It's going to be a phenomenal chess match. But again, going back to what I said, if Seattle is going to win Super Bowl 60, Sam Darnold's going to have a hand in it, and it's not just about handing the football off to Kenneth Walker. He's going to have to go out there and make some plays. But I'll tell you like this, to quote a good friend of mine, and I hope if he's not listening tonight, I hope he checks it out in the archives. It's something about taking off that Jet uniform. And I say the Jets because clearly Sam Darnold started his career with the Jets. But again, if something happens when you get away from a bad organization, people had reservations about Baker Mayfield after his time with Cleveland, even though, remember, Baker did get Cleveland to the playoffs and they did win a game. And look at what he's become, with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. You look at Sam Darnold, and there's so many other players throughout the history of the NFL, the history of sports, where once you get away or get from under a bad organization and go someplace where it's a little bit different, things change. You look at Sam Darnold. When he was with the Jets, he never had somebody like a Jackson Smith and Jigba to get the football to. He never had somebody like a Kenneth Walker to hand the football off to. Granted, he did have Le'Veon Bell, but at that point, Le'Veon Bell was not the Le'Veon Bell that we all knew from his Pittsburgh days. He didn't have the coaching, whether it's an offensive coordinator like Clint Kubiak or a head coach like a Mike McDonald with the Jets. So all of that comes down to the organization. He darn sure didn't have somebody like John Schneider running the front office and putting the talent around him on both sides of the ball. The kid you're saying, I heard Patriots had one of the easiest schedules this year. Is that true? Yeah, it was easy, but at the end of the day, it's kind of like, you know what? You still got to show up and play. And I don't think anybody expected the Patriots to be 14-3. I mean, I think if anything, if they had been 8-9, it would have been an improvement. But you know what? That's the thing. That's the beauty of football. It's the beauty of sports. Once you get on a roll, you can get on a roll once you start to believe in yourself. And this Patriots team, they started winning games early. They believed, and that was it. And it's the easiest way, or one of the easiest ways, for a head coach to get a team to buy into what he was selling, and that's why this New England team is in the situation that they are, playing for the biggest championship in the National Football League. But nonetheless, for Sam Darnold, um, I think he has the potential to go out there and have himself a solid game next week. I'll tell you like this: the I think it's going to be a game of adjustments. I think it's going to be a chess match between Vrabel's defense and Kubiak's offense first and foremost, and then of course Josh McDaniels' offense going up against the Seattle defense. It's going to be It's going to be a very interesting chess match. There's going to be some adjustments made, and it's going to come down to which defense is going to be able to heat up the opposing quarterback. But one thing we have seen from both of these teams this season is resiliency, because the mistakes that Drake May has made, the Patriots have been able to overcome those. The mistakes that Sam Darnold has made, the Seahawks have been able to overcome those. And I think that is part of the comfort for both of these quarterbacks. And of course, I'm focusing on Sam Darnold right now because if Sam Darnold, you go back to earlier this season when they lost that 21-19 game against the Rams and he threw 4 interceptions. If Sam Darnold throws 4 interceptions when he's a starting quarterback for the Jets lose by at least 24 points. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. So you're on a team that can overcome that. I don't see Sam Darnold having a game like that in Super Bowl number 60. But nonetheless, I think he's going to be ready to go. I think he's going to be up for the challenge. Some people will talk about, you know what, Sam Darnold always doesn't shine in the big games. I think about him in the Rose Bowl once upon a time when he was the starting quarterback for USC. Sam Darnold showed up and balled out to help USC win a Pac-12 championship. So I think this kid is going to be ready to go. I think this is an ideal situation for him getting back to what you were saying before, Ken Drickles. And also, I think it's an even better situation this year with the Seahawks than it was last year for Sam Darnold with the Vikings, just due to the fact that, you know what, there's more balance on the Seattle team, as their run game is better than the Vikings run game. The kid you're saying, yeah, they did beat the Broncos, and the Broncos were no joke this year, of course. Well, some people are always going to say, and it's true, Denver didn't have Bo Nix and the weather, and, it's one of those. But at the end of the day, you still got to go out there and show up and take care of your business. But for Sam Darnold, who thought that he would be in this situation, in September when the season began? And, just getting back to Sam Darnold real quick, I think back his first game with the Vikings when he started, which was the beginning of the end for Daniel Jones with the Giants. It was the Giants' home opener. The Vikings dominated them. Everybody was like, we're not going to get anything out of Sam Darnold. And Kevin O'Connell had him looking like a quality starter. And of course, that's carried over to this year. And even though he had that big season with the Vikings last year, I don't think a lot of people expected what we have seen from him in Seattle. But again, comfort and fit. It doesn't just like, stay with jeans or clothes or whatever like that. Football teams, it's also the comfort and the fit. TFX, you're saying, I wonder what would have happened if the Jets got Mayfield and the Browns got Darnold. The Jets still would have screwed it up. And I think the Browns would have still screwed it up because they are two of the worst organizations, not just in the NFL, but in pro sports. And I think this offseason so far is showing that for both teams. You look at the Jets, and how Aaron Glenn continues to fire coaches, basically wants to be the D coordinator. A whole lot of nothing going on over there. And I mean, with the Cleveland Browns, I mean, what can you say that hasn't been said? The bottom line is just cue the Benny Hill music with both of those organizations. TFX, you're also saying I think that Barkley was between them was a crazy draft. Yeah, Baker went one, Saquon went two, and then Sam Darnold went number three. And I think we saw five quarterbacks go in the first round that year because it was Josh Rosen. He went to the Cardinals at 10. Josh Allen went to the Bills at 7. And Lamar Jackson was the last pick of the first round as he went to the Baltimore Ravens. And of course, Lamar and Josh Allen are the only two quarterbacks that are still with the teams that drafted them. And of course, Josh Rosen is out of football completely. So it's one of those where, again, right organization or wrong organization can really shape your pro career. Didn't work out for Josh Rosen. Went to Arizona the year after he got drafted. The head coach that drafted him, I think it was Steve Wilkes, was let go. They went with Cliff Kingsbury. The Cardinals had the first pick. They took Kyler Murray, and the rest is history. You look at Josh Allen, perfect fit, I think, for his play, his style of play, and the coaching with Sean McDermott. Of course, Sean McDermott was just let go, and then of course Lamar Jackson going to the Ravens in that draft, and then you had Baker, who was looked at as a savior. No, yeah, Baker was looked at as a savior with Cleveland, and I think the same with Sam Darnold with the Jets. But like I always say, you know, the Jets, I think, would really do themselves they just do themselves a disservice by throwing these young quarterbacks out there so quickly, and they don't put the talent around them. And I would have loved to have seen a situation for Sam Darnold with the Jets where they maybe sat him for a year and let him get comfortable. But Todd Bowles was fighting for his job, and then he got let go. Or, instead of giving up on him when they brought in Robert Saleh and Joe Douglas, maybe you use those picks instead of trading Sam Darnold and drafting Zach Wilson, who's worse than Sam Darnold with the Jets. Maybe you use those picks to put some talent around Sam Darnold. You never know what could have happened. But you know what? That's why the Jets are the Jets and the Browns are the Browns. And that's why an organization like the Seahawks is competing for a Lombardi trophy. The kid, you're saying Sam Darnold seemed pretty serious after the NFC Championship game interview. He looked pretty serious. He looked like he's ready to go. Again, like I said before, right situation will change your mentality. He wants to win, and you can't take it for granted in the National Football League because tomorrow's never promised. It's like you look at the Detroit Lions, just switching gears real quick. They got to the NFC Championship game a couple of years ago. Dan Campbell screwed it up by consistently going for it on fourth down in the second half, and everybody's like, "Oh, they'll be back." The Lions may never get back to that situation. You look at the Houston Texans, championship defense. C.J. Stroud played bad against the Patriots. You don't know if Houston's going to be able to get back to that situation. So Sam Darnold knows he's had the highest of highs being a top 5 pick, and he's had the lowest of lows bouncing around. These situations ain't promised. So you got to go out there and seize the moment. And I think he's locked in because he wants to go out there and win a championship. And you think about it, all of the guys that have played in the NFL over the last 60 years, when you do the math, it's not a lot of guys who could say, "Hey, I have won a Super Bowl." When you look at the quarterbacks, it's not a lot of quarterbacks who can say, "Hey, I have helped my team win a Super Bowl." Sam Darnold has the opportunity to be a part of a very exclusive club. Sam Darnold also has the opportunity to join Russell Wilson as the only starting quarterbacks to win a championship for the Seahawks. So it's an exclusive club. So I would be locked in too. Just my thoughts right there. Ken Drickles, you're saying I heard that this free agent is going to be crazy this year. Lots of trades potentially. I heard. Oh, absolutely. I think, in my opinion, I think one trade that definitely goes down is AJ Brown. I feel like AJ Brown. Just switching gears to the Eagles real quick. I don't see the Eagles going forward with him. There in that situation. Eagles, that's a whole nother topic for another day, but I think that's one of them. And I think you're going to see some bad teams do stupid things like they always do. You're going to see some bad teams with a ton of cap space, which are going to overpay for some guys, which it ain't going to work out. And of course, you're going to see some bad teams make bad decisions at the NFL draft, like they always do. And teams like Seattle, teams like Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, who are going to be picking later in the round, they're going to have top 10 guys fall into their laps. And of course, the rest is going to be history. TFX, you're saying 2018 draft, top three teams that picked went absolutely nowhere after that, but those picks drives elsewhere. Of course, listen, like I said, bad organizations, bad situations, bad systems. They don't lead to great results. Okay, and I think for the football fans in the New York area, they saw the Giants give up on Saquon Barkley last year, and of course, his first year with the Eagles, he got a championship. And clearly, this ain't going to be Sam Darnold's first rodeo after leaving the Jets. But how ironic that two of the top three picks from that draft were to New York teams, and they could go back to back as far as winning the Super Bowl. But again, like I said, look at the organizations that they were with and look at the organizations that they are with right now. That's why I say great players don't win championships, great teams don't win championships. It comes down to great organizations. And Ken Drickles, to your point before, Sam Darnold has comfort. Sam Darnold uh, has gone into the right situation. And if he has a big game next Sunday night, I think it's going to allow his career to come full circle. And I think, you know what? Hey, hats off to him. Well, not in this case, but you know what I mean. But yeah, folks, I think he has the potential to go out there and have a solid game next Sunday. I don't think there's going to be a lot of pressure on him. I think there's going to be comfort, and I think both Mike McDonald and Clint Kubiak are definitely going to have him ready. But folks, that is going to wrap it up for this edition of the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast. I want to thank each and every one of you for chiming in. If you haven't already, definitely please feel free to subscribe to this channel. Like I always say, it's greatly appreciated. Definitely appreciate to feel free to like this edition of the podcast. And if you have subscribed already, or if you haven't, you can subscribe. And also definitely, please feel free to tell a friend about it. Definitely continue to check out this channel. I've got a lot of NFL stuff to talk about over the weekend as well as coming next week. You definitely want to check out this channel next Friday as I will be giving my Super Bowl 60 preview, how I think certain things are going to go down in the game, and of course, who I feel is going to win the game as well. The kid, definitely appreciate you chiming in. TFX, my man, always much love to you. Ken Drickles, definitely appreciate you chiming in. Please, definitely do not be a stranger to this channel. If you're on TikTok, you can check me out at 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge. Just got the TikTok going. If you're on the X, formerly known as Twitter, you can check me out at 300 Pounds of Sports. You give me that follow, I'll do the same for you in return. That also goes for Instagram, where you can check me out at 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge. And if you're on Facebook, definitely check out the Sports Depot 365. And as far as I'm concerned, one of the better sports groups going on social media. But until next time, fine folks, my name is William Martin. I'm signing off, and I'm saying thanks once again for checking out the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. Be well, everybody.